Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the turbulent waters of the 1980s, a time of leg warmers, shoulder pads, and some truly perplexing legislation. We're talking about the Reagan era, a period so transformative its ripples are still felt today. Ronald Reagan, the man who could charm a jellyfish out of a sea anemone, wasn't just about folksy charm and staring down the Soviets. His presidency brought about a wave of laws, some lauded as genius, others sparking debates hotter than a chili cook-off in Death Valley. So buckle up, Buttercup, as we dissect the most controversial legislation passed during Reagan's reign. We'll explore how these laws shaped America, for better or worse. Let's kick things off with a bang, or should I say, a tax cut. The Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981, a cornerstone of Reaganomics, promised to unleash the American entrepreneurial spirit by slashing taxes, particularly for the wealthy. The idea was that this newfound wealth at the top would trickle down, stimulating investment and boosting the economy for everyone. Economists were divided, some cheering for the potential growth, others predicting a ballooning deficit. The public had mixed reactions. Some saw their tax burdens lighten, while others, particularly in lower income brackets, felt left out in the cold. And let's not forget the impact on the national debt, which ballooned faster than a pufferfish in a staring contest. The debate over this act rages on today, with some arguing it paved the way for economic prosperity, while others point to widening income inequality and a legacy of debt. So, did the Economic Recovery Tax Act live up to its name? The answer, like a fortune cookie message, is open to interpretation. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to delve into the labyrinthine world of tax reform. The Tax Reform Act of 1986, a bipartisan effort, aimed to simplify the tax code, which at the time resembled a Jackson Pollock painting, colourful, chaotic, and utterly incomprehensible. The goal was noble: reduce the number of tax brackets, eliminate loopholes, and make the whole system fairer. The act did manage to lower tax rates for many Americans and close some notorious tax shelters. However, it also sparked controversy by eliminating or reducing deductions that many relied on, like those for state and local taxes. Critics argued that the act disproportionately benefited corporations and the wealthy, further exacerbating income inequality. Supporters pointed to increased economic activity and a simplified tax code. The Tax Reform Act of 1986 remains a subject of debate, with its legacy intertwined with the complex economic and political landscape of the time. Fasten your seatbelts, because we're about to navigate the minefield that is immigration reform. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, or IARCA, attempted to address the growing issue of undocumented immigration. This act was like a two-headed hydra, offering both a carrot and a stick. On one hand, it offered amnesty to undocumented immigrants who had been living in the US since 1982, providing a pathway to citizenship. On the other hand, IRC cracked down on employers who knowingly hired undocumented workers, imposing fines and penalties. While it did provide a path to legal status for millions, it also led to increased border security and employer sanctions, measures that continue to shape immigration policy today. Critics argue that IRC's enforcement-only approach failed to address the root causes of undocumented immigration, while proponents point to its success in reducing the number of undocumented immigrants entering the country. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 remains a landmark piece of legislation, a testament to the complexities of immigration and the ongoing struggle to find a balance between compassion and control. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to enter the Just Say No era, a time when Nancy Reagan told us to avoid drugs like they were the plague. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 was like a sledgehammer trying to swat a fly. Well-intentioned, perhaps, but ultimately about as subtle as a brick to the face. This act, fueled by a wave of public concern over crack cocaine and rising crime rates, implemented mandatory minimum sentences that were harsher than a drill sergeant with a hangover. The Act's impact was swift and severe, leading to a dramatic increase in the prison population, particularly among minority communities. Critics argued that the Act disproportionately targeted low-level offenders and fueled racial disparities in the criminal justice system, while proponents pointed to a decrease in drug use and crime rates. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 remains a controversial piece of legislation, a stark reminder of the unintended consequences of punitive drug policies. Buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to dive into the world of crime and punishment. The Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984 was like a multi-tool of law enforcement, packed with provisions that aimed to tackle crime from all angles. This act, fueled by a wave of public concern over rising crime rates, gave law enforcement sweeping new powers, expanded the federal government's reach into criminal justice, and generally made it a lot easier to lock people up. The act established new federal crimes, stiffened penalties for existing offenses, and limited the ability of judges to deviate from sentencing guidelines. Critics argued that the act eroded civil liberties, disproportionately impacted minority communities, and led to an era of mass incarceration. Proponents applauded its role in reducing crime rates and restoring law and order. The Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984 remains a controversial piece of legislation, a stark reminder of the trade-offs inherent in pursuing public safety. So there you have it, folks, a whirlwind tour of some of the most controversial legislation passed during Ronald Reagan's presidency. We've explored the good, the bad, and the downright perplexing, from tax cuts to immigration reform, the war on drugs to crime control. These laws, like a box of assorted chocolates, offered a mixed bag of sweetness and bitterness, shaping America in profound ways and sparking debates that continue to this day. Whether you view them as strokes of genius or colossal blunders, there's no denying that they left an indelible mark on the nation. What do you think? Which piece of legislation did you find most controversial?